Hi again, everybody. Michelle here. So discussion two. I chose to do some research on the 2018 arrests for the juveniles, and I was kind of surprised and a little surprised with some of the information that I had found on the OJDP website. One was in 2018 that we had 60% less arrests than we did in 2009, that we had 728,280 arrests made in that year. And of those arrests, 125,030 of them were actual for simple assault. One thing that really, really surprised me was considering how our texts, how the news, how the podcasts, how everything that we're being told and shown in the juvenile delinquency realm, I guess you can say realm, we keep being told about the young Black juveniles or Hispanic juveniles, or they're the juvenile delinquents. They're the ones that are the biggest populations. And yes, the minorities are the biggest populations in prisons. But in 2018 on the OJDP website, it shows us that the majority of the arrests were actually males that are white. 70% were males, and so that leaves 30% of women or young females being arrested. But of that 70% of the males that were arrested, 62% were white or Caucasian males. Not what you would expect. You know, we keep hearing about the Black youth and how they're always being arrested. But here the statistic shows us that 62% of the arrests were white males, while 35% were Black males, and then 3% for other. So I'm guessing the other makes up our Hispanic and Asian and any other race that could be in there. One of the next things that came to surprise to me, and it's really, really disturbing to me, is that of the arrests, 30% of those arrests are kids under the age of 15. I just never would think that we'd be out there arresting kids 15 and under, but I guess if they're doing these heinous crimes and assaults and murders and rapes and everything else, that yeah, they're going to be arrested. But 15 years old, man, you should still be at home playing video games. But that's a delusion that a lot of us have. Let's see. The statistics show us just how we as a nation have been kind of fed disproportionately the information on our arrests. We don't hear that the majority of the arrests were white males. All we're told about is the Black males and how they're the ones that are bad for society. They're the ones that are the worst juvenile defenders. Well, the statistics don't show that. Now, with reading the text and then going onto the website, one of the things I'd actually like to see myself with a statistical point is how many arrests were actually made in what months, because as we learned in the book, Mr. Siegel states that most delinquent acts happen in the warmer months of July and August. So I'm really interested, and I'm going to do some more digging on finding out just how many arrests were made in July and August. And actually, I'd like to see if there's a gender role in there too, if it's really mostly just males in those 2 months that are becoming delinquents, or if, maybe the summer months are higher for the women. Oh, let's see what else. Oh, another really interesting thing that I'd really like to do with the whole looking at the month thing is with how Mr. Siegel has informed us in the book on how there's the ratio of a 4-to-1 for violent crimes for male youths to female youths on, and then a 2-to-1 ratio on property crimes from male to female. Yes, we know, and we've read and pretty much know that the urban corridors are the hardest and the most affected with juvenile delinquency. And a lot of it has to do with, underperforming schools and our economic statuses. But I think I'd really be interested to further pursue looking into his whole summer month. What am I thinking? The summer months statistics. Let's see. Now for the podcast. Like I said earlier, I'm really surprised about the whole white to black ratio thing here and how this podcast is following black youths. But okay, that aside, the podcast really surprised me to learn how the 1990s became like the highest murder rate of all decades, and that we unfortunately are looking at the 1990s as being the era for the menacing young black male. Yes, they talked about the movie, and it's just a little disturbing that we're going to take this decade of the 90s, which was not a bad decade. And yeah, I know most of you probably were born in the 90s, not me. I graduated high school in the 90s. I started living my life outside of my home in the 90s. So I never really perceived it. And I'm from New York. So I had the urban corridor. I had New York City that I had at my fingertips to do whatever I wanted. I just never would have taken the 90s as hey, this is just about the black youth and being in trouble and they're a menace to our society and they're bad. And growing up where I did back there, and that's not how we took it. I grew up in an area with mixed everything. It just wasn't white, it wasn't black, it wasn't Hispanic. It was just a melting pot of everything. Back to the podcast. To me, thinking about how it's only focusing for these two black males, Z, and how he committed this crime and everything, yes, it's horrible. But I'm not quite on par with it, I guess. I would have liked to have heard a little more. And yeah, I understand we're going to get into more podcasts, but I'd really like to hear more about how his outcome was. He seems to be genuinely sorry for what he's done. Maybe not for what he did with the kid, but he's generally sorry for what he has put his mother through. And she's sorry that you can kind of tell that she's sorry that she feels like she has let him down too as a single mom and couldn't be there and couldn't be that strong father figure that he needed. Let's see what else. One thing in the podcast I found out that I really, really liked, and I think I'm going to go do some more digging into, was the essay by John, and I don't want to mispronounce his name, so I'm not going to say his last name. I'm just going to say John D. The essay that he did in 1995 and how it talked about the young black men not believing in arbitration. They don't think it exists. And how they believe there's only the guilty and non-guilty. There's no in between, which we're in this class and we're learning there is an in-between. The podcast talks about the in-between. Um, Unfortunately for today, not just our Black youth, but our white youth, our Hispanic youth, our Asian youth, any youth, male, female, purple, pink, polka dotted, it doesn't matter. They're all, that whole process is still in their heads, that they don't think that there's any in between, that you're either going to be guilty or you're not going to be guilty. It's really troublesome, and I'd really, really like to try to understand more and try to help eventually down the road with my career path, these kids to understand, not everything is black and white. There is gray in the middle. Let's see, is there anything else? I don't think there is. So I'm going to end my podcast and say I hope everybody's enjoying this nice snowy little weather we're getting here. And I apologize for my post for being so late, but unfortunately, the snow has caused a lot of havoc. I hope everybody's having a great time in this class. I know I am, and I'm learning a lot. And I'll talk to you on the next next upload. Thank you. Bye.